get a lot of hate for talking about alpha males so much, but let's face it, men who can project the vibe of an alpha are incredibly desirable. There's no way around that. If you were viewed as alpha, girls are gonna go crazy for you. So what I'm gonna share with you guys today are 5 ways that alpha males do things a little bit differently. So with that said, let's get right into it. Now, first up at number 1 is acknowledging his weaknesses. Most people, when they hear the word alpha, tend to think of some perfectly sculpted, almost godlike human being that has no flaws and never does anything wrong. But this is actually far from the truth of how alpha males really are in the real world. And despite what you might have been told, alpha males are not supremely confident in every situation that they encounter. And there are many times where they are actually less than alpha, but instead of pretending that they don't have any flaws, alpha males actually acknowledge these flaws, which is what makes them different and what makes them stand out. One of the most terrifying things for something like 99% of men is the thought of a girl finding out about his weaknesses or his flaws. Now, the truth is that a lot of guys have some issues with confidence and self-esteem, especially in certain situations. And one of the greatest fears that many of us have, especially as it pertains to dating, is a girl finding out about these flaws. True alphas can acknowledge their flaws, especially in front of girls, and this is precisely what makes them alpha. Undesirable men are those who constantly try to hide their weaknesses and their flaws in the form of anger or defensiveness when they feel that those flaws are being exposed. I personally am terrified of spiders. And in the eyes of a female, that would be viewed as a flaw or a weakness, because if I have trouble killing a tiny spider, how on earth am I going to protect her from some crazy guy who is trying to grab her and throw her into the back of a van? Now, I personally may never get over my fear of spiders, and I am personally okay with that. I can accept that. Alpha males know their flaws or weaknesses or things that they aren't good at and might never be good at, and they have no problem admitting them to other people. Number 2, alphas face their inner fears. Every single one of us has things that we fear, and the only way to completely destroy those fears is to face them. 99% of the problems that we face in our daily life are created and perpetuated by our own fear. But our fears in pretty much every situation are completely irrational. And for most of us, one of our greatest fears is being judged or laughed at by other people. Now sure, it would definitely suck if we messed something up and people laughed at us, but it's not the end of the world. Other people are far more concerned with their own problems and their own fears and their own insecurities to really care that much about the one time that we dropped our lunch in the middle of the cafeteria at school. Now, as I said earlier, one of my greatest fears is spiders. And I know you're probably secretly laughing at me right now, or you at least thought about it, but this is only one fear. Every day we face an endless barrage of fears, and the greatest difference between the way an average person acts and the way that an alpha acts is that an alpha is constantly facing more fears than he is hiding from. Projecting an alpha vibe is not about one single action, but rather the sum of all of your actions. The other day, a few seconds after I got into my car, a huge spider that was like the size of a golf ball dropped down from my rearview mirror and almost landed in my lap. And you better believe that as I dived out of my car, I was almost screaming like a little girl. So is that going to subtract a few points off of my alpha score? Of course. But for the rest of the day, I ended up facing many other fears and took many important risks that I needed to in order to succeed and improve in my life. And the only thing that matters is the sum of your actions. And as long as you face your fears far more often than you hide from them, you will be able to project the sort of vibe that you see from alphas. Number 3, alpha males trust themselves. Now, it sounds so simple, right? But how many of us regularly trust our own decisions? At the end of the day, success in almost anything that we do is a result of trusting ourselves and our decisions. Am I sad that this channel doesn't get as many views as it used to? Of course I am. But at the same time, I trust myself, and I trust that with your guys' support, I will eventually figure it out, wherever that path ends up taking me. Now, every single one of us is the captain of our own boat, and we might get help from other people in the form of knowledge from videos like this. But in the end, we are the captain and we have to steer our own boat. One of the worst things that you can do when you're trying to live your life more like an alpha is to be passive and to let other people decide your life and to make your decisions for you. The truth is that nobody knows your boat or your life or what's best for you better than you do. So every time you're given a chance to steer your own boat, or somebody else, like a girlfriend, indirectly asks you to steer their boat, take advantage of these opportunities to show others just how alpha you can be. Number 4, alpha males know when to leave it alone. A lot of people think that alpha males are these incredibly aggressive men who are always picking fights with people, and the truth is that true alphas are nothing like this. Always remember that the vibe of an alpha is calm and powerful, and this type of man is rarely ever aggressive and in your face. In fact, this type of behavior is precisely the opposite of what these people are trying to convey. Typically, when somebody exaggerates something, it is normally because they are trying to compensate for a lack of not having that very thing. Such as trying to project the image of being rich. It is usually because they are trying to compensate for a lack of that very thing. Something that many guys who do this have in common is that they are overly aggressive, and they are the types of guys who will easily start a fight with someone over something incredibly dumb. Men who are insecure are typically quick to anger, and they might try to start a fight with you just for looking at them wrong. Something you have to remember is that alpha energy is calm, powerful, and controlled. And one of the greatest differences between men who have an alpha vibe and men who don't is the ability to leave it alone. I know that's probably what many of you tell your dog when he's barking at something he shouldn't be barking at, but it's kind of the same thing with men. Throughout life, you will have many situations where people try to get under your skin, usually because they're mad about their own life and problems they're having, or for some other really trivial reason. And one of the things that truly sets the alpha apart is knowing when it's better to leave something such as a problem alone. Something that alphas are really good at is risk assessment, so they are able to quickly determine whether something is worth conflict or not. If you look down a dark alley and you see a girl getting robbed by some guy and there's no one else around, the phrase "leave it" obviously wouldn't apply here. But imagine you're in another situation where a guy steps on your shoes, and when you tell him to watch where he's going, he goes into fight mode. In this situation, obviously it wouldn't make a lot of sense to get into a fight over a pair of shoes unless of course they stepped on your new pair of white mules. Then it might actually be worth it. But all jokes aside, alphas know when the risk far outweighs the reward, or they know when to leave it alone or when to pursue it. Number 5, alphas compete with themselves. Now this is going to go against everything that you've ever heard about alpha males, but a true alpha is not always in competition with other people, but with himself. These days, it is easy to log onto social media, and with a few swipes of your thumb, you can find someone who appears to be living a life that is at least 100 times better than the one that you're living. Alpha males actually love competition, but they primarily compete with themselves first and foremost. A true alpha wakes up in the morning and asks himself, not how can I be better than Dan from Instagram, but how can I be a little bit better by the end of today than I was the day before. If our primary competition is other people, then this is a battle that we will never win. But if instead we focus on competing and outdoing ourselves, this is far more realistic, and it will have a much more positive impact on our confidence levels and how we feel about ourselves in the long run.